I'm Jada Grimes, and I'm 14 years old.
Jada and her family have quite the story to tell, so let's get to know them a little bit more. She has 3 older siblings, and she does have a favorite.
So I think it's pretty obvious that my sister is the favorite. But, I mean, my brothers, they really toughen me up, so they're fun to be around, though. But yeah, my sister, she's really fun to hang out with, and she's really somebody I can look up to.
There are no favorites when it comes to her parents, Jeff and Sheri.
He is very hardworking. He sets a great example for us. He also has a great relationship with God, and he also is just a very humble person, the most humblest person I've ever known. She's very caring. She takes so much care of us. Like, we wouldn't be able to survive without her. The house would not look the same.
And the Grimes gang are a sports-loving group.
Football is very important in our lives, and even volleyball too.
It's not surprising volleyball is Jada's sport of choice. Her mom and sister competed collegiately. As for football, her 2 brothers play for Baylor and Kansas respectively. Oh, and her dad is the offensive coordinator for the Jayhawks.
Being a part of the Grimes family, we're a family of God, and we value our relationship with each other.
Valued relationships. That's the key to the Grimes family game plan. And Jada is a big part of it.
I think it just makes for a great story.
Welcome to BYU Radio's Big Stories, telling the amazing and inspiring tales from the Big 12 and beyond. I'm your host, Cleon Wall. Our episode, A Football Family's Playbook. When I asked to interview Jeff, Sheri, and Jada Grimes, I thought I might meet them at their home or at the University of Kansas's Anderson Family Football Complex. Then again, the Grimes had just moved to Lawrence, so they probably didn't want me to go to their home.
When I take a new job, I go, it's like, hey, will you take this job? Yes, I will. Okay, can you be here tomorrow at 7? And that's how fast it typically rolls. So I'm doing my new gig, and Sheri, is stuck with everything back home.
The football complex was off limits since it was undergoing renovations along with David Booth Memorial Stadium. So we met in Jeff's temporary office at Rock Chalk Park, about 5 miles west of campus and the stadium. It's the home of the Jayhawks soccer, softball, and track squads. To me, it seemed fitting to meet in a short-term office since the college football coaching profession can be short-term and transitory. It doesn't seem like a great career path for a family man or his family. So the first question I asked the Grimeses was how many times they have moved since Jeff became a football coach. Sheri first answered 16, but then she and Jeff started listing off all their stops.
Well, the first move was to El Paso.
They kept naming schools until
Baylor, Kansas.
That's just 14. I was 2 ahead.
On average, Jeff and his family have moved almost every 2 years since he decided to become a football coach.
I really didn't initially see myself getting into coaching. Like most guys who play the game, you kind of focus on playing the game and think you're just going to do it as long as you possibly can, and sometimes don't even think about what that next step's going to be. And so when we got married, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And then wasn't happy, kind of got into the workforce, waiting on another job that I had kind of agreed to accept, and really just felt compelled to go into coaching. And that's when she and I talked about it. I said, well, I'm kind of asking you because you need to know what this means. I mean, we're probably going to move a lot. It's going to be unstable, and we're going to have to kind of take on a somewhat nomadic lifestyle if we're going to be like most coaches typically are. And she said, yeah, if that's what you feel like God's calling you to do and that's what you want to do, then let's go do it. And if you're happy, then we'll be happy.
A spiritual answer to this, which is so real to us, is God paving the way for us.
There are a lot of reasons to coach, but, I hope that a lot of us, certainly me, I hope that I'm doing it for more than just me.
Jeff has used football to impact a lot of people over the years, but he almost chose a different path.
There was a point in my career where I really felt family and my job kind of pulling against each other, and seriously considered getting out of college coaching.
The Texas native was a rising star in the coaching profession, going from Division III Hardin-Simmons to Boise State, then to Arizona State in just a few years.
I was at Arizona State and just felt like I was not being the kind of father that I could be or should be.
Jeff was in a quandary. He wanted to spend more time with his family, but he also didn't feel at peace with getting out of the football coaching business.
Shortly after that, I got a call from somebody who said, hey, would you be interested in coming to BYU?
He valued, his time with his wife and kids, and that's why he came. He wanted a little bit more time to be around his family.
This is former Brigham Young University quarterbacks coach Brandon Doman.
I think I appreciated that in him. I think it humanized him a little bit more than others that I had been around and experienced being with.
One of the things I learned was that you can do both things and do them really well if you balance your time well. And that was one of the things that I thought Bronco did a great job of.
Bronco Mendenhall was Jeff's head coach for 2 of his 3 years at BYU.
I thought he really gave us the opportunity to be great family men and be great on the field. And I really, really respected that.
Bronco created a culture of being with our families. We worked our tails off on Mondays and Tuesdays. We were always in there early in the morning because we didn't work on Sundays. Jeff grew to love that. He loved having the ability to be home on a Sunday and be around his family. And he's a faith-based spiritual guy. And I watched him dig into, his faith while he was here. And that I think also played into how he was as a husband and a father, and his kids were young.
So I was blessed to work with him before we started having kids.
Jeff passed down his knowledge to other coaches like A.J. Steward.
When we were at BYU, he asked me one time, it was like during recruiting time, and he's like, hey, when'd you leave, when'd you leave or whatever to recruit? And I told him I left on Sunday so that I could be there on Monday morning, get a good night of rest, whatever, be there, hit it fast on Monday. And he's like, yeah, have fun with that now. He was like, when you have kids, you're going to want to spend as long as you can, with them. And so, he kind of explained like, hey, sometimes I'll take the red eye, sometimes I'll take an early morning flight on Monday, 5 a.m., whatever I need to do to spend a little, another night with my family.
Sometimes in this profession, the demands are so high that some guys will kind of choose to just do their own thing and spend all of their lives chasing the game. And then one day they look up and they don't have much of a marriage and they don't have very much of a relationship with their kids. And so one of the things that we try to share is that you can have a great marriage and you can have a great family, and I can be a good dad, even in one of the most demanding professions that there is.
You can be a great coach and still be an elite husband and an elite father and an elite person in general. And then that's the reason why I've always signed up to go anywhere he is, because I know I'm not only going to become a better coach, being around him, but I'm going to become a better man being around him.
There was a time there where Jeff Grimes was considered the number 1 offensive line coach in the country. He's a really good football coach. And I could see that he wasn't going to be at BYU very long.
Jeff eventually left for the University of Colorado and several other jobs along the way. And at every stop, his wife was by his side.
We're a team. I took it serious to understand the game. But at the same time, the personal piece of it is like, I want to know your players. I want to know your players' girlfriends. I want to be involved. And there would be times he would even text me and go, hey, Johnny here, I had to get on him, and he probably needs a little love from you because I had to get on him.
I mean, she's taken food to guys who just got out of surgery. She's prayed with guys. She's cleaned their apartments because they were sick or, on crutches and couldn't move around too good. And so she really embraces that part of it. It's our thing. It's not just my thing. We had a tragic shooting when I was coaching at Auburn, and 2 of the guys that were offensive linemen that I coached got shot. One of them was killed, and another was shot, hospitalized, and then released the next day. And he was from out of state, didn't have family around, and so he came and stayed at our house, and Sheri took care of him and just she's a physical therapist, so she got some medical training too. I mean, she understated her value in all of this and her relationship with the players.
She's just a servant. You know, anytime she sees you, she's gonna make you feel like you're the most important person. Just give you the biggest hug you could ever get, and she's always checking. Anytime hey, how's your family? Do they need anything? She's been great with the players.
Sheri would make queso for the guys every Thursday.
BYU center Connor Pay played 1 year for Jeff in 2020 during Grimes' second stint with the Cougars, this time as offensive coordinator.
He was awesome. I mean, he's the type of coach you want as an offensive lineman. I was a nobody on that team. I was not consequential to that team's success at all. And even me, he would spend time, making fun of me a little bit over text, right? He kind of set me up, where he's like, hey, your pass protection's really improving. He sent me a text like that, and I was like, oh, this is sick. The OC's hyping me up. And then I said, oh, thanks, Coach. I've been working really hard on it or whatever. And he says, your wide zone, on the other hand, ... And he's like, it's like 40, 50 minutes between text messages. He's just dragging this out. And I said, yeah, it's not great. I'm trying to figure it out. And he goes, it's actually atrocious, with laughing face emojis. And he sent me a few other texts just making fun of me. And then, he waits like a whole day almost. And then he's like, let's go out early to practice together tomorrow. We'll get it right. Just one-on-one, me and him. And, that meant a lot to me as like a freshman. He loves to tease us and make fun of us and make you feel like you're sitting on coals a little bit. Yeah. At the end of the day, he just wants to help you.
A kid that I coached at Auburn, good player, in a little bit of trouble every now and then, and there was one particular incident where he was in trouble for something and didn't want to admit it right away, came in my office, and after 3 days of us having discussions about it, finally was able to come clean with me. And tears just start literally like dropping off of his cheeks onto the carpet like this. And I said, why is it taking you 3 days to tell me the truth? He said, Coach, I respect you so much. I just couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to say that to you because I knew it would disappoint you. And he ended up doing great and was a part of our national championship team. A few months after that national championship, he had gone somewhere to train like most guys do, and he's back in town for pro day. And I saw him when he's working out a little bit, talked to him briefly. Then I went back to my office later in the day, and there's a note sitting on my desk, and long note, front, back, handwritten. And the gist of it is how much I've meant to him and how much he values our relationship. And he said, I wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for you, and you're the dad that I never had. And in that moment, I looked over and I saw a national championship ring sitting on my desk. And I said, that means more than that ring does.
If the only thing you have to look back on in life is how many games you won or how many rings you have, I mean, that's cool for us, but there's no fruit in that, for your family.
Here again is Kansas offensive analyst A.J. Steward.
He's meant everything to me. Number one, his belief in me, and my ability as a coach.
Steward coached with Jeff at BYU and Baylor. He left Waco after Coach Grimes was fired as the Bears' offensive coordinator. This could have rocked the entire Grimes family because Jeff didn't choose to leave. But he and Sheri look at it differently.
It's almost easier because when I make the choice to leave, I think that's harder for everybody other than me because I didn't have to do that. So when I left BYU to go to Baylor, my youngest son was the same age that Jada is right now, and he was so upset with me that for 6 months he wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, I would literally have to pick his chin up to look me in the eye. And in the end, it ended up being a great thing for him, and he would tell you that today.
Something that we've done the last several moves is writing out very specific prayer requests to the neighborhood, to a church, to a club volleyball team, to a good school system, and really watching God check all the boxes and allowing the kids to grow in their faith as we pray details to him and him take care of that.
So that same boy that I was telling you about a minute ago, he and I are riding home in my truck after the last game at Baylor last year, and we just pulled up in our driveway, and he looks at me, he goes, "Dad, if you could choose, would you rather Coach Aranda get fired or for you to get fired?" And I thought, that's a heck of a question, you know? And he's committed to Baylor at the time. He's going to go and play there. And so I said, well, it would be better for me personally, from a professional standpoint, if it was the head coach, because then it wouldn't be me, it would be all of us. But if I could choose, I honestly would choose for it to be me, because I'm going to be fine. The Lord's going to take care of us like he always has. I'll get another job. Yeah, it'll be hard to move. But if it's just me, then I can handle that, and that gives everybody else an opportunity to hopefully continue, and all those other families don't have to move and go through that hardship right now. And so then the next day that happened, and then we're sitting there watching, he and I sitting on the couch watching Sunday Night Football. And as we're watching it, there's the little ticker runs across the bottom with the news stories, and it says, "Baylor parts ways with OC Jeff Grimes." And I looked at him and I go, that's what I'm talking about right there. And he's like, yeah, I see what you mean. We had all, as a family, kind of worked through all this to some extent already that day. But all of that together is a really hard but cool and meaningful experience for us as a family.
Martin Luther has a quote, this is super paraphrased, so forgive me, but it's something like, if I knew I was dying tomorrow, I'd still plant my apple tree. And for us as parents, we have really pushed, grow your roots deep. Don't hold back. Love strong, love deeply, grow close to people, because you move like this, it's easy to kind of keep people at a distance. And so we do that, and then when you move, it hurts. It hurts, but it's been, God has totally taken care of us through that, but it's a great adventure.
I moved 5 times, lived in 6 different states. It's been pretty hard leaving my friends and my brother too, but I'm really excited for what's coming up in the future.
But Jada's past and a decision made by Jeff and Sheri completed this football family's playbook. That's next on the Big Stories podcast. Hey everyone, this is Cleon Wall. We hope you are enjoying this season of Big Stories. We love bringing you these stories that inspire and can also humble you. Now, if you are looking for another podcast which also has great stories and talks about all things BYU women's sports, then make sure you check out the Her Why podcast. It's hosted by Lauren McLean. You'll hear from current coaches like Jen Rockwood and Heather Olmstead, and athletes like BYU basketball's Amari Whiting and Cougar soccer star Ellie Walbrook. You'll also hear from legends like Olympic runner Courtney Wayment and Utah Royals forward Brecken Mozingo. So make sure you subscribe to Her Why wherever you find podcasts or on the BYU Radio app. Welcome back to BYU Radio's Big Stories episode of Football Family's Playbook. Kansas offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes and his wife Sheri have moved 14 times because of Jeff's job as a college football coach. That included his most recent move to Lawrence, Kansas from Waco, Texas, where Jeff was let go by the Baylor Bears.
There were a lot of things in Texas that both of our dads are deceased and our moms are there, and our oldest boy plays there, and it would make sense to stay, but it was time to go, and that's what needed to happen. And so to me, it was clarifying. Doesn't make it easy, but it was clarifying.
In spite of all the moves and the craziness of being a college football coach, Jeff has always put his family first.
I decided that I wasn't going to have other hobbies outside of the things that we did together. I mean, there's not space for that in my life. And, guys ask me, hey, do you golf? No, I don't golf. And maybe someday when our kids are all grown up, maybe she and I will golf. But no, I don't have time to golf. I have time to do what my family wants to do. And so my oldest boy loves to fish. And so, I'd go fishing with him, or we'd all go fishing together. More than anything, we did everything together.
But before Jeff and Sheri had any children, the couple talked about the makeup of their future family.
I just had this urging. I felt like adoption was part of the plan for us. And I felt like it should be a child of another race. And I can't really explain it to you other than it was beyond me. And so we were on our way back from a vacation and sitting at an airport and just kind of waiting on our next flight. And I looked to her and I said, I kind of think I want to adopt a kid someday. And she goes, no way, me too. And I go, I think it should be a child of another race. She goes, no way, me too. And we had never talked about it before, ever had a conversation, not once about it.
The right time to adopt came after the births of daughter Bailey and sons Garrison and Graydon. The Grimes opted for an international adoption.
Back then, it could have happened in 6 months, but we had a couple of moves in there. And so that process ended up taking 3 years.
During that 3-year wait, Sheri started having some medical problems.
I thought I was falling apart because I had just turned 40. But just started having some weakness and then turned into some vision issues and then got more and more significant to the point of slurred speech, difficulty holding up anything. I was seeing a neurologist who couldn't place a diagnosis on it. And it had gotten bad enough where, Jeff asked me, should we proceed?
Jeff had a good reason to ask that question. While he was on a recruiting trip, he received a call from the couple's adoption agency.
Then they said, hang on, I'm going to get Sheri on the line. Didn't tell me anything. So both of us are on the line, and then they start telling us about Jada and say, we think this is a great fit for you. And so we're both crying on the phone. She was 4 months old when we got the call, 8 months when we traveled.
And I always get emotional talking about this because I knew in my heart that baby who's sitting right here was coming to our home. And yes, the medical piece of it was scary. We weren't sure what was going on with me, and I kept getting worse and worse and worse. So we actually traveled to Ethiopia with not a diagnosis. And he was brave in that time because we had 3 other kids. And so it was a little bit scary, but also knew that was a part of the plan. I mean, you just heard Jeff say that God implanted that in our hearts. And so we went to Africa.
That's when the Grimes finally met their new 8-month-old daughter.
Etiana was my Ethiopian name, and so they moved it to my middle name. So now I'm Jada Etiana Grimes.
She bonded with us very quickly. Initially, she was a little bit taken back, like when they first handed her. I don't know if you've heard this story, but when they first handed Jada to me, I hold her like this, and she goes like that. And they said, it's okay. She may never have seen a white person before. And she was a little bit uncomfortable, not real fearful. She wasn't crying or anything, but just seemed a little bit uncomfortable. And then we fed her, and then she fell asleep. Still got the picture of her. She fell asleep on my chest, laying down on a couch like this. And when I woke up, she sat up, and she looked at me, and she had this big smile. And then from that moment on, she was like totally cool with us.
We did get a chance to meet the birth mom and birth grandfather, and that was such a blessing. Took pictures of them and everything, and had a chance to talk about the adoption of their daughter and granddaughter.
She was really young. When we met her, she was 19 years old, maybe 18 when she got pregnant, and just said that she wanted Jada to have a better life. Tried to take care of her for a few months, and then just recognized that she wasn't able or ready to do that.
When we finished our meeting, Jada was crying, and they were bringing us to her. So there was this moment of the birth mom seeing her and us there, and she wanted to hold her. and Jada was bawling, and she's holding her, and yet she's reaching for us. And it was, I don't know, it was like this powerful moment of like, she's ours. So to me, it was again another confirmation, like, this is right, even though I felt bad for her birth mom at the moment.
Miracles were abundant after the Grimes arrived back in the United States.
I mean, she was a dream baby, very easygoing, and would go to other people. So the grandparents felt very, excited and welcomed by her.
Sheri also received an official diagnosis for her ailment.
It's an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. Ended up with a neurologist who researches the disease. He put me on the right medication, and everything got better.
We really just wanted to show something different to our kids, and really attempt to raise them in an environment where they didn't see differences based on skin color.
Eventually, Jada did notice a difference.
I still remember we were at a swimming pool, and she looks up at me and says, "Mom, she's brown like me." And I'm like, "Jeff, she figured it out." But before that, she did not see anything different, and we don't either. That's what God sees, no difference with that.
I don't know how old I was, but I do remember looking through a photo album of my birth family.
I wanted her to be proud to be adopted. I wanted her to be a proud African-American woman, but also a proud Ethiopian. So it wasn't anything we kept from her. It was just done in pieces as she was old enough to understand. And so when we went to Ethiopia, we videoed so many things. We took 1 million pictures, as she referenced earlier, made a scrapbook with, so many details in there that she could look through and understand as she was able to understand.
The conversation about Jada's relationship to Jeff and Sheri have been funny but teachable moments.
I was at volleyball tryouts, and I was like about 12 years old, and some coaches asked me, they're like, "How tall are your parents?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, my dad's like 6'6", my mom's 5'6", or 5'8", and them thinking, "Oh wow, she's gonna be really tall one day, great volleyball player, great outside hitter," but no, I'm currently 5'1" right now.
There was this little bitty girl, she's probably 4, and she came up to me, I was holding Jada as a baby. She looked at me, she goes, "She's brown and you're peach." That's how she described it. And she goes, and she said, "Are you her mommy?" And I said, "I am." And it was so cute because she was just trying to wrap her mind around it. And I told her she's adopted, and then you have an opportunity to talk through that. So I think it's, educating people that adoption is a great thing. It's been great for our family. We are open about it.
Eventually it'll come up. But I mean, I don't really mind it at all. I like telling the story.
Just like her mom and sister, Jada hopes to live out her volleyball dreams.
I would really hope to play college volleyball. That has been a dream of mine for a long time.
She does love volleyball. She comes alive when she's on the floor, and I love seeing that. She has the ability to draw people towards her. She has the ability to brighten up a room. Our family wouldn't be what it is without her. Someday, another volleyball team won't be the way that it is without her. And someday, some family certainly won't be what it would be if she weren't the wife and mom. And I just know she's just gonna do great at that. And I just want, I look forward to seeing her be the best version of herself that she could be. And I know that's something special.
It sounds like Jada has already immersed herself in the Grimes family playbook.
I mean, they're just elite people.
We'll let Kansas offensive analyst A.J. Steward have the final word on the Grimes family.
They're anomalies, especially in this, I would say, the world that we live in, and even especially the profession. Just their hearts. They have big hearts, and what you see is what you get. I love the Grimes family.
A Football Family's Playbook was produced and written by Whitney Sheffield and Cleon Wall. Music and post-production by Finn Morrison. Make sure you watch BYUTV's Big Stories by logging on to BYUSN.com. Big Stories is a production of BYU Radio.